All right, we begin this morning with the polls. A new Ipsos poll of 992 registered voters taken after the assassination attempt on Donald Trump shows the race a dead heat. A dead heat, with Trump ahead of Biden by 2 points, well within the margin of errors. And that has 16% undecided or voting for a third-party candidate who may or may not even be on their state ballot. A brand new Morning Consult poll of 2,045 registered voters taken one day after the shooting shows Joe Biden trailing Donald Trump by 1 point, with 15% either undecided or voting for a third-party candidate. The same poll shows Trump beating Vice President Harris by 1 percentage point in a hypothetical matchup that's well within the margin of error. A dead heat. Remember, here's the map. Biden just needs Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. That gets him to 270. The latest Real Clear polling averages show Trump winning in Arizona by more than 5 points. Trump up by 5 in Arizona, but he doesn't need Arizona. The Real Clear averages show Trump beating Biden by 5.4% in North Carolina, where Robert F. Kennedy just got on the ballot. The Real Clear polling averages show Trump up by a little more than 5 points in Arizona. Biden doesn't need Arizona. Real Clear polling averages show Biden losing to Trump in Georgia by 3.5 percentage points. Doesn't need Georgia. Biden can lose all those states. He needs to win Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. That gets him to 270. In Wisconsin, Real Clear averages show Trump leading by 3 points within the margin of error. Real Clear averages show Trump winning Michigan by 1.3 percentage points, well within the margin of error. 8 years ago, the same averages showed Hillary Clinton beating Trump in Michigan by 7.4 percentage points. She ended up losing Michigan. Pennsylvania, the Real Clear averages show Trump beating Biden by 4.5 percentage points, slightly outside the margin of error. 8 years ago, the Real Clear averages showed Hillary beating Trump by 3.2 percentage points in Pennsylvania. She lost Pennsylvania. In order to get to 270, Biden needs Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Wisconsin and Michigan very much in play, and polling there is inconclusive. It isn't Labor Day yet. Pennsylvania seems to be slipping away from Biden. If this were after Labor Day, it would be worrisome. But there is no polling that shows any Democratic candidate doing better in a hypothetical against Trump. Nobody does better than Biden in a hypothetical. And Trump picking J.D. Vance narrows his path to victory. Vance closes off the women. He's incredibly anti-abortion. His statements are already being scrubbed from his website, his pro-life statements. Trump made a huge mistake. I never thought he'd be this irresponsible to pick J.D. Vance. Trump didn't pick a woman. He said he was going to pick a woman. He didn't pick an African-American. He picked a white male from Ohio. He doesn't need Ohio. Vance doesn't raise the ceiling. He lowers it. By the way, the Cook Political Report writes this morning that new polling shows in a state like Pennsylvania, we see Biden's poll numbers dropping 1 or 2 points after that debate. But Trump's numbers didn't go up correspondingly. They stayed the same. This suggests Trump has a very hard ceiling. It says what I believe to the core of my very being, and that is people who were disturbed, possibly appalled by Joe Biden's debate performance, thought, I can't vote for him. But they didn't say, so I'm voting for Trump. As I just pointed out, Trump's polling remained static after the debate. He didn't win over Biden voters. Biden just lost 1 or 2 percentage points. Nobody, and Biden's going to win them back. Did you see the interview with Lester Holt? Did you see his speech before the NAACP? Are you listening to what he's saying? pitch perfect response to the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. Nobody is voting for Trump because Joe Biden is old and hard to understand. Nobody is voting for Trump because he survived an assassination. And that's what the conservative echo chamber is saying. They're all saying Donald Trump survived an assassination and everybody's going to vote for him. If anything, the assassination attempt makes Donald Trump look weak. It makes him seem human. He's not supposed to be human. He's a Superman. And it makes his position on AR-15s look inhuman. His gun policy subjected that crowd in Butler, Pennsylvania, to a mass shooter. A man died at Trump's rally because Trump and the entire Republican Party is in the pocket of the gun manufacturers, and a vast majority of Americans want an assault weapons ban. A Fox poll, this is a Fox News poll last year, shows 61% of Americans support banning assault weapons and semi-automatic weapons. 87% of Americans in that same Fox News poll said they support universal background checks for all gun purchases. Gun control, the assault weapons ban, which Joe Biden supports, was not going to be on the table this election cycle, but thanks to what happened Saturday, it is now. It's a really bad look to be the party of assault weapons and then kick off your convention with your nominee showing up with a bandaged ear because he came within 1 inch of an AR-15 turning his head into mist. After Trump was shot, House Republicans were grotesque enough to proclaim ecstasy. They said Trump survived an assassination attempt, and that means he's going to win by a landslide. That's what they said in the minutes after the assassination attempt. Really? Do you really think voters are going to think, oh, Trump's a hero? Or more importantly, are they going to think that Trump's luck somehow will rub off on their children during the next school shooting? You think that's what voters are saying to themselves? Trump got lucky, and his luck will spread to my kid for the next school shooting. No, they're not saying that. They're saying what I'm saying. We're all saying the same thing. Thank God Trump survived. For many reasons, thank God he survived. But a firefighter was killed that day. Trump didn't look strong. He looked weak. He didn't whip out a gun and fire back, which is what his and the Republican Party's official stance on guns is. Only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. Trump didn't whip out a sidearm and fire back. He had the world's best security, and even they couldn't stop it. So I don't think Trump looks strong or heroic. I think he looks weak to most voters because most voters think his position on assault weapons is weak. If he can get shot and barely survive, what chance do our children have? This is not a good look. It doesn't look good to show up to your convention on the very first day with part of your ear blown off. It reminds voters that your policies don't keep us safe. 1 million people died from COVID because Donald Trump didn't protect us. And he almost died from COVID. This year, more than 50,000 Americans will die from gun violence. And Donald Trump almost died from it because he refuses to protect us, all of us, including himself. Thank God he missed. Former Speaker Nancy Pelosi is reportedly working the phones expressing concern that Joe Biden cannot win. Congressman Adam Schiff, the Democratic candidate for Senate in California, is now warning that Biden is going to drag the entire party down with him. Keep in mind, Schiff and Pelosi are from California and beholden to big Hollywood donors who are abandoning Joe Biden. But Biden is riding out the clock. In order to qualify for the Ohio ballot, Democrats have to make Biden the official nominee by August 5th. The convention is scheduled 14 days after that. So Democrats have a virtual roll call scheduled for July 29th, with Biden becoming the official nominee by August 5th, just in time to get on the Ohio ballot. And Joe Biden is playing out the clock. There are 13 days left until the virtual roll call, and despite a handful of House Democrats starved for attention, despite a handful of them asking for the roll call to be postponed, it will go on as scheduled. Biden is the nominee. He is reportedly angry with Democrats who are still questioning his nomination, and he continues to tell them, I'm the nominee, I won the most delegates, it's over. Did you see the interview Monday on NBC with Lester Holt? Is anybody listening to our president? I know he's a little hard to hear. Biden refused. It was brilliant. His statement Sunday night from the Oval Office was brilliant. He's not backing down. He refused to acknowledge on NBC News Monday that both sides of the aisle have dialed up the temperature when it comes to heated political rhetoric. It's a false equivalency, and he said so. He said you cannot compare the words and deeds of Donald Trump to those of Joe Biden's or the Democratic parties. When Lester Holt asked about Joe Biden telling Democrats that we need to put Trump, quote, in the bullseye, Biden said, you know I wasn't talking about putting Trump in the crosshairs. And everybody knows that. I said, put him in the bullseye so we can focus on him. And then he turned on Lester Holt, and rightfully so. And he said, why are you not talking about all the lies that Donald Trump is telling? Biden, during the interview, agreed that this country has to focus on policy. Less rhetoric, more policy. Like he said, an assault weapons ban. He came out for an assault weapons ban right after Donald Trump got shot by one. He spoke before the NAACP on Tuesday. This is what Biden said, quote, the Republicans are saying, you can't criticize Trump because he got shot. This is what our president said to the NAACP on Tuesday, quote, so if you want to stand against violence in America, then join me in getting these weapons of war off the streets of America. An AR-15 was used in the shooting of Donald Trump, unquote. People say it's not right to politicize the shooting. Of course it is. Biden went there. He's not backing down. And where are you going to find a Democratic candidate this smart, who has fought this hard for an assault weapons ban, who after Uvalde passed a bipartisan gun control bill that, toothless as it is, was the most stringent gun control law in 30 years. He got something passed, and he signed countless executive orders, including one that closes the gun show loophole. Where are you going to find a Democratic candidate who has such a strong record and knew exactly how to thread the needle after Saturday's assassination attempt? It was brilliant. The Washington reports this morning that Joe Biden is going to run against the Supreme Court. Starting on Labor Day, he's going after the Supreme Court. He is reportedly planning to call for new legislation that enforces a stricter code of ethics, as well as term limits for Supreme Court justices. He's also planning to call for a constitutional amendment to overturn the Supreme Court's ruling on presidential immunity. A new Fox poll. Why is he running against the Supreme Court? A new Fox poll shows the Supreme Court's approval rating has hit a new low, with only 38% of voters approving of the job the court is doing. You think it's just Joe Biden's approval ratings that are underwater? So is the Supreme Court. In March of 2017, the court's approval rating was 58%. Now it's 38%. And why is that? Abortion, abortion, abortion. Abortion is on the ballot. And if more women than men vote in this election, Biden wins. You look at the polling across the board. White women, black women, Asian women. Biden beats Trump with all women. The problem is men, specifically white men, but hasn't it always been? That's why Vance, J.D. Vance, is such a rookie mistake that Donald Trump made. It is such a bad choice. J.D. Vance does nothing to bring women over to the GOP column. He's 100% pro-life, and he's a mean man. Well, calls for unity apparently fell on the deaf ears of both Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz and his arch nemesis, former Speaker Kevin McCarthy. McCarthy was talking with CNN Tuesday night at the convention when Gaetz kept tapping him on the shoulder, asking, this is something I would do, asking McCarthy, hey, are you going to speak tonight? Are you going to speak this week? Are you going to speak? Because if you're going to speak, they're all going to boo you because they hate you. Everybody hates you. And a friend of McCarthy kind of shoved Matt Gaetz out of the shot. Later, Kevin McCarthy explained why Matt Gaetz is so angry with him. McCarthy said, quote, this was on, I think he said it to CNN, quote, Matt Gaetz had an ethics complaint 4 years ago that he paid an underage girl for sex, and she had come to the ethics committee, and he came to me to try to leverage me to stop the ethics investigation. That's illegal. I'm not doing that, unquote. McCarthy then added, Matt Gaetz probably shouldn't be out on the streets, unquote. In the past, McCarthy said Matt Gaetz belongs in prison. The House Ethics Committee has reopened the investigation into Matt Gaetz. Gaetz, if you remember, introduced the motion that successfully forced McCarthy to give up his speakership. This is what happens when you get a room full of Republicans. They start turning on one another. That's happening in Milwaukee. This is what they do. They feast on themselves. Donald Trump told Axios that he plans to take, Donald Trump Jr. told Axios that he plans to take a major role after the election, serving on his father's transition team, weeding out anyone who's disloyal from serving in the Trump White House. Jr. says he has no interest in working for the president. He just wants veto power to block what he called the bad actors. No bad actors. That's horrible news for Kevin Sorbo, who was eyeing a cabinet post in a new Trump administration as Secretary of Good Hair. Don Jr. has replaced Jared as the kingmaker behind the scenes. He has his father's ear. Let me just have a sip of coffee here. Anyway, Jared has his father's ear, and he reportedly played a major role in J.D. Vance getting picked for the number 2 spot. Of course he did, because it was a stupid idea. And Don Jr. is stupid. But it wasn't only Don Jr. lobbying hard for J.D. Vance. So was Elon Musk, Tucker Carlson, and Peter Thiel. All the people we trust. Didn't Peter Thiel apologize for supporting Trump back in 2016? Didn't he say he was wrong for supporting Donald Trump in 2016? I know last year, Peter Thiel said the Trump administration turned out to be crazier and more dangerous than he had expected. He said last year he was going to sit 2024 out, admitting that there are a lot of things that he got wrong in 2016. Last month, as recently as last month, he said in Aspen, at the Aspen Ideas Festival, if you put a gun to my head, I'll probably vote for Trump, but I'm sitting this one out. But he couldn't help himself. He had to get involved. And he pushed his private equity buddy, J.D. Vance, on Trump. Peter Thiel, once again, couldn't keep his finger out of the Trump administration. Now, Trump resisted Vance at first as vice president because Vance said some questionable things about Donald Trump. And we all know Trump is big on loyalty. Loyalty comes first. That's why he had unprotected sex with a porn star just weeks after his wife gave birth to their son. Loyalty. Vance once called Trump America's Hitler. But while he was getting vetted for the number 2 spot, Vance succeeded in convincing Trump that calling him America's Hitler was actually a compliment. So, on Monday, Donald Trump made it official and said he chose the junior senator from Ohio, J.D. Vance, to be his vice president. J.D. Vance. For some reason, Vance reminds me of O.J.'s first girlfriend after Nicole died mysteriously. But far be it from me to question Trump's judgment. However, hang J.D. Vance just doesn't trip off the tongue the same way hang Mike Pence does. Kellyanne Conway, Trump's former campaign manager, White House political advisor, and Mother of the Year, was reportedly pushing Donald Trump to pick Tim Scott, the South Carolina senator who, now that he's out of the running for Trump's vice president, should probably go ahead and cancel those wedding plans. Tim, you no longer need to prove anything to anyone. The first J.D. Vance scandal you're going to be hearing about is his Our Ohio Renewal. Our Ohio Renewal. That was a charitable foundation Vance set up right after Trump was elected in 2016. The purpose of the charity was to address opiate addiction, which he wrote about extensively in his book Hillbilly Elegy. But while the charity raised money, all it ever accomplished, according to reporting in the Associated Press, was paying for one single doctor to do a residency at a hospital in Appalachia. And that doctor, as well as the program that employed her, had ties to Purdue Pharma, which single-handedly created America's opioid crisis. So Vance quietly shut down his charity before launching his 2022 Senate bid. He'll be asked about the charity, and I'm sure Trump already asked him about it. Like, you had a charity and you didn't try to get rich off it? What's the point of having a charity if you can't get rich off of it? J.D. Vance also managed 2 private equity funds. Private equity firms destroy jobs. They're your enemy. Remember Bain Capital, Romney's firm? Leverage buyouts. They take perfectly good companies, saddle them with debt, and fire everybody while collecting enormous fees. We're going to hear a lot about all the jobs J.D. Vance destroyed as a private equity manager, and we're also going to hear how he was able to lower his tax bill by taking advantage of the carried interest loophole that allows wealthy hedge fund managers and wealthy private equity managers like J.D. Vance to pay 20% on their income, while the rest of the country in that tax bracket pay 37%. Vance, graduate of Yale Law School, becomes 40 next month. He is an ex-Marine turned author turned private equity fund manager turned freshman senator from Ohio who offers nothing in the way of conciliation towards the old Republican guard. He's a really bad pick. He is thoroughly MAGA, however, and was given the seal of approval by Turning Point USA leader Charlie Kirk, whose fundraising prowess has given him significant influence within the party. You can raise money. Charlie Kirk can raise money, but he can't get votes. These are unlikable people. J.D. Vance is unlikable. So picking J.D. Vance on the surface doesn't seem to offer any coalition building on Trump's part. You're supposed to build coalitions, and you do that by picking a vice president. But Vance doesn't build any coalitions. He is a Yale Law School graduate, and he ran several private equity funds. So he knows how to talk to the ruling class because he's part of it. Like Trump, he's only a practitioner of populism, faux populism. He's not a real populist. So what bridge did he build? None. J.D. Vance builds no bridge to the type of voter who would have voted for Trump if Rubio were the vice president pick. The Republicans over the past 8 years have become a cult of personality. It is the party of Trump, and yet it is about more than just Trump. There is policy, said and unsaid. You saw Mitch McConnell getting booed on Monday. Why does he put up with that indignation? Why does he debase himself this way? Because of the policy. And what is that policy? Isolationism, no foreign wars. No foreign wars, so they claim. No NATO, no standing up to Putin in Ukraine, which Mitch McConnell is for. Mitch McConnell is not an isolationist, and he's pro-NATO, and he's pro-standing up to Putin in Ukraine. But Mitch McConnell is toast. It is also the party of no abortion. That's why Mitch McConnell sticks with the Republicans and other reasons. It's the no abortion party, but no national abortion ban. And this is a problem for Donald Trump because this election is about abortion. Trump decreed earlier this year abortion is now a states' rights issue. And that's where the Republican Party, which had toyed with Lindsey Graham's national abortion ban, they're now leaving abortion to the states. No national abortion ban because that's what Trump commanded. It's a smart move. It's the only move available to Trump because America is really angry about Roe being overturned. As I said earlier, the Supreme Court's approval rating is now at an all-time low. This is why J.D. Vance was such a bad choice. It's a swing back towards the people dragging the Republican Party down, the Christian right. Trump knows he can afford to alienate the Christian right. The ones who wanted Arizona's Civil War era abortion ban to remain on the books. Trump got it off the books. He said, no, I gave you the Dobbs decision, and this is as far as it's going to get. I'm not going to be reelected giving you everything you want. And he says that openly. And Trump knows he has the evangelicals cornered. Where else are they going to go? Who else are they going to vote for? He is taking them for granted because he knows who they are. You can't bullshit a bullshitter. Trump knows most of these pro-lifers are bullshit artists. They're fundraising scam artists, just like Trump. And he's saying privately to them, don't bullshit a bullshitter. So why did he pick J.D. Vance? Why did he pick a man who calls himself 100% pro-life? J.D. Vance has said repeatedly, I don't believe in any exceptions, not even the case of rape or incest. This is a dumb pick. The bridge that Trump is trying to build is one between the hard-right evangelicals who oppose abortion after fertilization, somebody like J.D. Vance, and those willing to give it about 15 weeks, especially in the case of rape and incest. That's the bridge that Trump built by picking J.D. Vance, because Trump believes in exceptions, and J.D. Vance doesn't. So that's all he accomplished, is building a bridge that he didn't need to build. You need to build a bridge to independent women, and J.D. Vance pushes them away. Bad, bad, bad pick. Now, Trump's states' rights position on abortion, it expands the base. It makes it easier for some women to vote for him, especially women who live in states like Ohio, which last year enshrined the right to an abortion into its constitution. He already has Ohio. J.D. Vance is the senator from Ohio. Why would he pick J.D. Vance? Vance is from Ohio. Trump is already going to win Ohio. What does Vance bring to the table? Trump is going to win Ohio in November because leaving abortion to the states works for Republican women in Ohio. Their daughters can still get abortions. Vance is a really stupid pick. But of course, Don Jr. pushed for it. He's a stupid pick and a stupid prick. So, while the party is a cult of personality, with Vance, it is also now the party of tariffs, anti-globalists, anti-free trade, pro-local police, but anti-FBI, CIA, and pretty much all the agencies that answer to the executive branch. This is now officially a party that wants to dismantle the departments of education, weaken, if not eliminate, the Environmental Protection Agency, and J.D. Vance fits perfectly with the Heritage Foundation's Project 2025, which Trump claims he knows nothing about. Right, the same way he had no idea who David Duke was after the KKK leader endorsed him. Earlier this year, J.D. Vance called on Trump to, he said when Trump gets reelected, he should fire every mid-level bureaucrat in Washington and replace them with party loyalists. That's straight out of the Heritage Foundation's Project 2025. And when he was told that would be illegal, you just can't fire bureaucrats and replace them, turn them into political appointees, J.D. Vance invoked the spirit of Andrew Jackson, a genocidal maniac who Donald Trump calls his favorite president. Vance said Trump should say to the court what Andrew Jackson supposedly said, which was, "You made your ruling, now go enforce it." Nobody's really sure Andrew Jackson said that. And by the way, he is purported to have said it about the Trail of Tears. The Supreme Court said stop uprooting Native Americans and sending them to Oklahoma. And J.D. Vance and Donald Trump think of Andrew Jackson as a hero because he said to the Supreme Court, "You made your ruling, now try to go enforce it. I'm going to commit genocide on the Native American community." This is who this party is. He's a Yale Law School graduate. Vance says climate change is not a real threat. He is opposed to solar power and electric vehicles. According to the New York Times, he's accused Biden of harassment. He says Biden is harassing the oil companies. Poor babies. He mocks windmills just like Trump, who has made the Republicans the official party of climate denial. Trump has also turned it into a party that is officially pro-kleptocracy. A kleptocracy where those who pay get to play. 3 months ago, the Washington Post reported that Trump instructed oil companies to donate $1 billion to his campaign, calling it, quote unquote, a deal. It's a deal. He says it's an investment because I'll reverse all of Joe Biden's executive orders reining in fossil fuels. It is the party of deregulation. deregulation for oil companies and gun manufacturers, and deregulation for hedge funds, private equity, and shady bankers. Look who is donating to the campaign now. All the big hedge fund managers, all the big Wall Street firms. Why? Trump is promising to extend the tax cuts for the richest 1%, and he wouldn't dare think of putting anyone in charge of the SEC or our Justice Department who would prosecute after these white-collar criminals get caught. Picking J.D. Vance is a sharp, hard right turn that packs what seems like ideological and intellectual heft to the ticket. But it's just ambition. J.D. Vance is just bringing craven ambition to the ticket. He is an angry and mean man. But he's also a Yale Law School graduate, an ex-Marine, an author, as well as a private equity populist. That's what he is, a private equity populist. And trust me, the same way Mitt Romney had a lot of explaining to do for Bain Capital when he was running for president in 2012, J.D. Vance is going to have a lot of explaining to do about his private equity firms, Mr. Populist. He tries to offer up a story of working his way out of poverty, and then he revisits that poverty in Hillbilly Elegy. And in that book, he draws all the wrong conclusion when it comes to self-sufficiency and government intervention. He thinks he's a self-made man. And there is nothing more dangerous than someone who thinks they did it all by themselves. It breeds a toxic hyper-individualism and a deep-seated contempt for humans who show vulnerability. Never Trumper and former George W. Bush speechwriter David Frum said that Vance wrote for one of his magazines back in 2011, and Vance wrote that he supported cuts to Medicare and Social Security. Very supportive of the hillbillies in Appalachia. What are they going to do with Medicare and Social Security? They don't need it. This is the I made it, so why can't you school of cruelty. This is MAGA. And MAGA, the ideology, is not popular with voters. Trump is popular, but what he stands for underneath it all is not. Picking Vance was a really stupid idea politically for him. By doing so, Trump doubles down on the MAGA cult, keeping the Republicans a party of white, angry, heterosexual Christian men. Now, the cynical move, the one I thought he would deploy, the right move politically would have been to pick an Hispanic, an African American, or a woman. That would have opened up the base to low information voters who find solace in black Republican politicians like Tim Scott, who on Monday declared in front of a convention filled with nothing but white bigots that America is not a racist country. According to the Wall Street Journal editorial board, Trump going with J.D. Vance reveals an inner confidence that he can win in November without courting swing voters. It's a bad pick. He's turned his back on women and swing voters. J.D. Vance is not a softening agent. He's a red meat practitioner of the politics of spite and malice. It turns voters away. And he is going to lose the female vote, which Trump, whether he likes it or not, needs. Vance pushes them away. Despite Trump prattling about J.D. Vance's beautiful blue eyes, Vance is not telegenic. He's not cute. He offers nothing to the ticket, especially women. When you are an adjudicated rapist, which Joe Biden is pointing out on the campaign trail, that Donald Trump is an adjudicated rapist, and women are going to remember that. You need a softening agent. J.D. Vance is not a softening agent. All the polls show, every single poll shows Biden is winning with women across the map, across the board. Every age range and demographic of women, Joe Biden wins with women. If women vote, except the evangelicals, if women vote in November, Trump loses. We just need women to vote and men to stay home. J.D. Vance pushes women away. It was generally assumed that Trump was going to pick a woman. He said so. He said, I'm going to pick a woman, which is why Kari Lake and Marjorie Taylor Greene spent all of winter down in Mar-a-Lago breathing in his farts. They actually thought he was going to pick one of them. With abortion being a real problem for him and the Republican Party, picking a woman like Nikki Haley would have softened things. Haley tempers the GOP's hardline stance on abortion. In Tennessee, abortion right now is illegal after fertilization. J.D. Vance says he opposes abortion, period. No exceptions for rape or incest. Nikki Haley softens the position. She's against abortion, but during her campaign, she had a way of making her position sound less misogynistic for low information female voters who figured, hey, Haley's a woman, she'll watch my back. No, she won't. Haley spoke to the convention Tuesday night and said, quote, you can vote for Trump even if you disagree with him, especially when there are 7-figure posts on corporate boards awaiting you. She's already cleaning up. She's already become a multimillionaire. She's a union buster, an open union buster. She said, as governor, unions are not welcome here in South Carolina. They poison the well. Well, the problem, but she would have been a much better pick than J.D. Vance. But the problem is the Republicans hate women. You see the way they're going after the head of the Secret Service. They're calling her unqualified. They're calling her a diversity hire. The GOP hates women, and the women who rise to the top of that party are hateful, gun-toting misogynists. Haley was able to rise above that because she's just stupid and ambitious. I don't think she is as hateful as the rest of them. I think she's too ambitious and too stupid to have time to hate. But the other women in the party are just as monstrous as the men. Sarah Huckabee Sanders, the governor of Arkansas now, Kari Lake, who's running for Senate in Arizona, Marjorie Taylor Greene in Georgia, Lauren Boebert in Colorado, and Kristi Noem, the governor of South Dakota. They're just platitude-spouting, gun-toting, dog-killing, angry, and vindictive bullies who are parodies of how they think a man should behave. Trump says, before J.D. Vance, I'm picking a female. But there aren't any, not any appealing females in the Republican Party other than Nikki Haley, but she was disloyal. She challenged him. Female Republicans across the board, except for Nikki Haley, come across even crueler than Trump. J.D. Vance is no better. He comes across just as mean. Trump is mean. But Trump, and I know a lot of people disagree with me, he's funny. And he's able to convince enough people that he's less a threat to our Constitution than he is just a goofball. You know, he plays it dumb. And it's not that hard for him to play dumb. There is something, not to me, but there is something likable about Donald Trump. Not to me, but there is something likable to him. Nothing likable about J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance is a really bad choice, despite serving in the Senate for fewer than 2 years, and that's the only political office he's held. Vance leaves behind a paper trail that shows he doesn't believe in any exceptions when it comes to abortion, including rape or incest, like Mike Pence. Vance brings to the ticket closer ties to the religious right than Trump is able to, but Trump doesn't need that. He needs to shake the religious right loose in order to expand his base. He's narrowed his base. Vance, after getting picked by Trump, immediately scrubbed his website of the following statement. This is a man with courage of his convictions. This is what J.D. Vance scrubbed from his website. Quote, I am 100% pro-life and believe that abortion has turned our society into a place where we see children as an inconvenience to be thrown away rather than a blessing to be nurtured. Unquote. He scrubbed that 2 days ago from his website. But that's going to haunt him. He can claim he didn't say that, but he left receipts. Bad choice. Bad guy. J.D. Vance, bad guy, bad choice. Trump doesn't need somebody like J.D. Vance, somebody who doesn't believe in abortion, even in the case of rape and incest. That drags him down. You're not going to get women to vote for you by picking an angry white man like J.D. Vance, who is a creep. He's a creep. Politico reports J.D. Vance openly admits that he believes in the devil. And he's running on the same ticket with him. He openly believes in the devil. He has said in private meetings that the devil works horrible things into our government. And J.D. Vance is living proof of that. He is anti-science. Yale Law School, anti-science. Last year, J.D. Vance introduced legislation banning federal mask mandates. He introduced legislation banning gender-affirming care for minors. Vance, in 2021, told a group of young people that Alex Jones has a more accurate view of the world than Rachel Maddow. And he's an election denier. He said, had he been vice president, he was on ABC News about 2 months ago. He said, had I been vice president instead of Mike Pence on January 6th, I would not have certified the election for Joe Biden, who he held responsible for Saturday's assassination attempt on Donald Trump. Right after Donald Trump, after the assassination attempt, J.D. Vance blamed Joe Biden's heated political rhetoric for the assassination attempt. That is heated political rhetoric. When you blame an assassination attempt on Joe Biden's heated political rhetoric, that is heated political rhetoric. He's a bad, bad guy. Vance said, he's an election denier. He said as vice president, if he were vice president instead of Mike Pence on January 6th, he would have welcomed the slates of false electors into the mix. and he would have pushed for the election to be decided by the House of Representatives. He would have welcomed the slates of false electors. He is a graduate of Yale Law School. He should be disbarred for saying that. Those slates of false electors, forgery, have resulted, those slates of false electors have resulted in ongoing prosecutions in Georgia, Arizona, Michigan, Nevada, Wisconsin. They are illegal. It's why John Eastman got disbarred in California, and it's why Rudy just got disbarred, because of the false elector scheme. But he wanted the election to be thrown into the House of Representatives because, and this is what the Green Bay sweep was all about, just creates so much confusion, so much doubt that the Supreme Court says, just let the House of Representatives decide. Well, Trump, they all knew that Trump would have won the presidency in such a scenario because each state gets one vote. If it's thrown into the House of Representatives, and according to the Constitution, I don't know if it's the Constitution or maybe it's the 12th Amendment, I'm not sure. But according to the rules, let me know in the comments section. I'm going to just take a wild swing and say it's the 12th Amendment based on nothing. But according to the rules of the game, if it's thrown into the House of Representatives, each state gets one vote. So even though Biden won 2020 by 7 million votes, there were still more red states than there were blue states. In other words, California, which if it were a country would be the world's 5th largest, California would get the same number of vote as Wyoming, which has fewer than 600,000 people, gets. One. California gets one vote. Wyoming gets one vote. Are those two states equal? No. While maybe not part of the pro-Putin wing of the Republican Party, J.D. Vance is celebrated as an isolationist, an American firster, who opposed giving further military aid to Ukraine. Days before Putin invaded, you might remember, President Biden kept warning he's going to invade Ukraine. He's going to invade Ukraine. And J.D. Vance said, quote, "I don't really care what happens to Ukraine one way or the other." The Economist reports that J.D. Vance has called Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, grotesque. Vance, a strong supporter of Israel, and is for giving aid to Israel, he's opposed to giving aid to Ukraine, and according to The Economist, isn't too enthusiastic about giving aid to Taiwan. Well, in the so-called plus column, you're going to read positive things about J.D. Vance. The Wall Street Journal editorial board labels Vance problematic because of his support for unions. So faux populists are citing this editorial saying, see, the Wall Street Journal doesn't like him because he supports unions, but he really doesn't. He portrays himself as anti-Wall Street and pro-worker. How can you be anti-Wall Street when you run 2 private equity firms? And yes, he might be pro-worker, but he's not pro-labor. He's pro-jobs, not pro-union. The New Republic reports this morning that despite J.D. Vance's claims of being pro-union, which he hasn't really said, he's pro-worker, he refused to get on board the PRO Act. They asked him, Democrats said, will you get on board the PRO Act? And he won't. The PRO Act, if it were passed, Joe Biden is trying to get it passed, the PRO Act would weaken so-called right-to-work laws now on the books in 27 states. It would legalize solidarity strikes, outlawed by Taft-Hartley. It would legalize solidarity strikes that allows workers to strike a corporation in solidarity with another union that has gone out on strike against that corporation. They do it all the time in France. They have solidarity strikes in France. That's why they live longer in France. They have strong unions. The PRO Act would also strengthen the National Labor Relations Board, allowing it to impose heftier fines on corporations like Amazon or Starbucks that refuse to engage in collective bargaining even after workers decide to form a union. Are you drinking coffee from Starbucks? Anti-union Starbucks? J.D. Vance does not support the PRO Act. You think someone who manages 2 private equity firms is going to support the PRO Act? Is going to support labor and unions? Are you out of your mind? When the United Auto Workers went on strike last September, Vance coyly said he supported the workers, but he couldn't bring himself to say he supports the union, the UAW. He supports jobs, not workers, the same way slaveholders supported jobs, not workers. Like Donald Trump, J.D. Vance used the auto strike to lash out at the Biden administration's green energy initiatives that incentivize Americans to buy electric vehicles. This is climate change denial. This is all pro-fossil fuel. Vance, during the auto strike, deflected attention away from union contract demands and said, green energy is what's killing auto jobs because China will end up making all of America's electric vehicles. See? Say you support jobs, not high-paying jobs, not necessarily union jobs, just jobs. The issue of the strike was not electric vehicles and China. The issue was a labor contract. But they can't bring, Trump and J.D. Vance can't bring themselves to say they support the United Auto Workers, whereas President Biden became the only American president ever to march in a picket line. Remember, he famously joined the UAW and marched with them last fall during the strike. And in May of this year, Biden addressed Trump's concerns about Chinese-made electric vehicles. In May of this year, Joe Biden placed a 100% tariff on electric vehicles made in China. He also placed a 25% tariff on Chinese-made batteries for electric vehicles. So basically, China can no longer sell electric vehicles in America. Biden is not afraid of a little protectionism, which is going to make it that much harder for Trump to run against him after Labor Day in states like Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. God forbid Jake Tapper or Dana Bash bring up the 100% tariffs on Chinese-made electric vehicles when Donald Trump is spewing lies about Joe Biden killing the auto industry. God forbid Tapper and Dana Bash do their job. So, like Trump, there are the things J.D. Vance says and the things he does or doesn't do, like support the PRO Act, like support unions. The Economist writes that J.D. Vance claims to be a strong supporter of Joe Biden's controversial head of the Federal Trade Commission, Lina Khan. He rails against corporate greed, but he himself is a beneficiary of the carried interest loophole and has offered no legislation to rid America of stock buybacks or pushing for eliminating Trump's tax cuts for the richest 1% that added $8 trillion to our national debt. There's what they say and what they don't do. The Economist points out that Vance, deeply religious, just like Speaker Mike Johnson, they both claim, according to The Economist, to support expanding the child tax credit, which, when implemented during the first year of Joe Biden's presidency, lifted more children out of poverty than any other piece of legislation in the history of America. Joe Biden, by expanding the child tax credit, lifted more children out of poverty in 2021 than anything Roosevelt or LBJ did. But Republicans let it expire, plunging those children back into poverty. Johnson, Speaker Mike Johnson, and J.D. Vance, who are both 100% pro-life, no exceptions, they now say they support renewing expansion of the child tax credit. They say that, but so far, nothing. One would think in an election year, both sides would come together on expanding the child tax credit so children wouldn't starve. But just like the bipartisan border bill, Trump wouldn't allow passage of expanding the child tax credit because that would make Joe Biden look good. Sorry, kids, no clothing or shelter for you because that would help Joe Biden. And yet, they insist they're the party of Christians. Kiss my ass. With Vance on the ticket, Joe Biden, just like Donald Trump, also dodged a bullet. Biden would have had a much harder time with Rubio or Haley in the number 2 spot. And we are hearing that Biden celebrated after Donald picked J.D. Picking Vance, according to insiders, Biden believes that by picking J.D. Vance, Donald Trump is doubling down on MAGA and narrowing Trump's hard right base instead of reaching out to moderates. This is what Joe Biden believes. Joe beats Trump if Trump can't moderate the hard right MAGA movement, if he can't soften it. J.D. Vance hardens it. Bad choice. Bad choice. Vance is a bad pick politically. He is not liked. He is not charismatic. He has served barely 2 years in the Senate. And yes, he won his Ohio seat back in November of 2022. But The Economist reports he underperformed the rest of the Republican Party that year. For example, the governor of Ohio, Mike DeWine, won re-election with a vote count 20% higher than Vance's in 2022. In other words, Ohio voters, when Republicans voted for the governor, and a lot of them said, I'm not voting for J.D. Vance. You realize that the governor of Ohio, Mike DeWine, got 20% more votes than J.D. Vance in 2022. Amy Walter, over at the Cook Political Report, says picking Vance means Trump has just given up on women. Well, I think women have given up on him. That's why he's a rapist. Instead, according to Amy Walter, he's fighting for the working class vote in places like Wisconsin while turning away from suburban women, even though conventional wisdom says that the next president will be decided by suburban women living in the key battleground states. To put it another way, Trump is playing to his hardcore base, aggrieved white men. But there aren't enough aggrieved white men to win elections anymore. Because, as J.D. Vance so eloquently pointed out in Hillbilly Elegy, they're all dying. Amy Walter, over at the Cook Political Report, questions the wisdom of doubling down on MAGA. Picking J.D. Vance is doubling down on MAGA. She notes that since 2016, MAGA Senate and gubernatorial candidates have lost consistently in swing states like Georgia, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. And yes, J.D. Vance won in 2022 because he was endorsed by Donald Trump, but he was an outlier. 2022 was supposed to be a red tsunami, remember? Instead, the Democrats kept the Senate, and Republicans barely took the House, and they're barely able to hold on to it. At some point this year, Mike Johnson remained Speaker with barely a 2-seat majority. Why is that? Donald Trump, MAGA. America doesn't like MAGA. They like Trump. They don't like what he stands for. They don't like Trump, but they like the ones who vote for Trump like him. They don't like MAGA. They're not listening to the lyrics. They're dancing to the music. So, had Trump picked Rubio, that would have expanded the base, bringing in moderates, independents, internationalists, globalists, and Republicans, bankers who are probably, many of whom are going to stay home on Election Day because they're turned off by Trump's divisive strain of isolationist, faux populist politics. And it's all reinforced by his horrible choice of J.D. Vance. Now, I'm going to tell you something really creepy that was in the New York Times this morning, and it's really creepy. But it's in the New York Times, and if I would advise you, if you don't want to get creeped out, you might want to stop listening. The New York Times reports this morning that Tucker Carlson lobbied hard for J.D. Vance, and last week warned against Marco Rubio, calling Rubio disloyal, and because of his support for Ukraine, Tucker Carlson warned that because Rubio wants to give weapons to Ukraine, if he ever rose to president, he would lead America into a nuclear war. Tucker Carlson, who stood alongside Donald Trump on the very first night of the convention, when he was lobbying for J.D. Vance, went on to call Marco Rubio a neocon who is aligned with the deep, dark state. This is where it gets really creepy. But according to Maggie Haberman in the New York Times today, Tucker Carlson last week warned Donald Trump that Rubio, as his vice president, would serve as an incentive for America's intelligence agencies to assassinate a would-be President Trump so Rubio could take his spot. That is Maggie Haberman's reporting in the New York Times. That's reporting from Maggie Haberman in today's New York Times. You might remember on this show, I said Don Jr. recommended a full-on MAGA Republican for vice president because he said a moderate vice president aligned with the old guard Republican establishment, that kind of vice president would make it easier to remove Trump. And I thought he was talking about impeachment insurance. Don Jr. said on his podcast that Democrats would come after his father with everything they got during a second term, and what would make Trump's removal appealing to the moderate wing of the Republican Party is knowing that a moderate Republican like Marco Rubio would be waiting in the wings. So the thinking is, don't give them an alternative to Donald Trump. Give them a vice president equally as MAGA, if not more so, than Donald Trump. I thought he meant impeachment insurance. But now in the New York Times, I read that Tucker Carlson warned that Trump would be assassinated by the deep, dark state if Trump had a neocon, an establishment Republican waiting on deck. This is where we are in America. I never imagined they'd be talking about assassination insurance. And that conversation with Tucker Carlson was before the attempt on Donald Trump's life. This is where we're at. This isn't me. Again, this is Maggie Haberman of the New York Times. She is reporting one of the reasons Trump picked a far-right MAGA conservative is because Tucker Carlson warned that intelligence agencies would be far less inclined to assassinate Trump if there weren't a neocon waiting in the wings. He said if there's a neocon waiting in the wings, our intelligence agencies would be more likely to assassinate Trump. So, very disturbing. I'm almost reticent. Like, I don't want to talk about this until I saw it in the New York Times, and I thought, well, we have to talk about this. This is what a second Trump administration is going to look like. Complete distrust of our intelligence agencies, complete mistrust of the FBI, and most importantly, an abject fear that the Secret Service is filled with Biden loyalists. What happened on Saturday makes it critical that Donald Trump not win. We should drop to our knees and thank whomever that Trump survived for every reason under the book. But he did get shot. And getting shot changes people. It changed Reagan. It made him more forgetful. But other people, it makes them even more paranoid than they already are. If Donald Trump finds his way back into the Oval Office, he is going to remember what happened on Saturday, but he's not going to outlaw assault weapons because he only cares about his own physical safety. There are plans after the convention next week for the Republican-controlled House to conduct a massive investigation into the Secret Service's failures, catastrophic failures, last Saturday in Butler, Pennsylvania. Those hearings, pardon the pun, are going to be a bloodbath. I have heard that just like after Uvalde, just like after the Parkland school shooting, on Saturday, a local police officer in Butler, Pennsylvania, when confronted by the shooter brandishing an AR-15, chose his own life over those of the people he swore to protect. That's unfair, but that's what's being said. In Uvalde, 2 years after that massacre of innocent school children, the police chief was just indicted for his delayed response. They are blaming the police chief for Uvalde. Exactly 1 year ago, the police officer who hid for cover during the Parkland school shooting was found not guilty. But he was the scapegoat. He was indicted for child endangerment because he was accused of backing away from the shooter. He was accused of choosing his safety over the students. He was found not guilty. I am certain there will be indictments of local police in Butler, Pennsylvania for what went down on Saturday. I am certain the female head of the Secret Service will be forced to resign. Because here in America, instead of blaming the guns, we are now blaming the police. Instead of the assault weapons or the semi-automatic rifles, we are blaming the Secret Service, as though the police or the Secret Service can stop a mass shooting. I will say this, however. When there is a mass shooting, when there is an assassination attempt like last Saturday, I do blame the police. I do blame law enforcement for their silence. It is the police, it is law enforcement who should be demanding an assault weapons ban. They, of all people, should be demanding an assault weapons ban. It is those weapons that are making their job terrifying and impossible. It is the police chiefs who need to stop taking freebies from the National Rifle Association and the gun manufacturers and do what they did back in 1994 when Bill Clinton got the assault weapons ban passed. They need to speak out against our culture of guns. Guns don't make us free. They make us less free. And mark my words, if Trump somehow finds his way back into the Oval Office, he and a Republican-controlled Congress will do away with the Secret Service and create a brand new security apparatus whose sole mission is to keep Donald Trump and his party loyalists safe. Right now, the President of the United States currently has 250 emergency powers at his disposal. Because of the guns in this country, because of Donald Trump's distrust of the intelligence agencies and the FBI, he will create his own government-sponsored security apparatus that, because of these emergency powers he has, as well as the Supreme Court's most recent ruling on presidential immunity, this security apparatus, this palace guard, will answer solely to Donald Trump. And it will be all because of the assault weapons in this country. All of our liberties will be stripped from us. We will have to watch what we say. We already are watching what we say. We have to tone down the heated political rhetoric. We already are toning down the heated political rhetoric because of the assault weapons. Under this new security apparatus, our mail will be opened, our phone calls monitored, because we have to protect our leaders from the assault weapons. So, tell me once again how guns make Americans more free. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. Thank you for listening to me. This has been the Mop-Up for July 17th, 2024. I've been David Feldman in New York City. Thank you so much for finding me. If you enjoyed any of this, please hit the like button. That's how I remain in your feed. Please hit the notifications button. I have an irregular schedule, so if you hit the notifications bell, you'll know when we have a new show up. And please share this with like-minded people. Subscribe to my newsletter, please. Follow me on Twitter and what else? Instagram and Threads, Facebook. I have a Facebook page. I'm trying to do a little more social media. I like to test ideas first on social media. So if you want to help me write the show, subscribe to my Twitter feed, because I will often test an idea on Twitter. I know it's Elon Musk. I shouldn't do that. Thank you to Bob in the chat room. And Joe Biden, listen to what he's saying. His interview with Lester Holt. How dare anybody question this man? Listen to what he's saying. If you would like a transcript of today's show, go to shopdavidfeldman.com. Those transcripts are made possible by listeners who have purchased garbage at Shop David Feldman, like the Still a Democrat t-shirt, the Still a Democrat coffee mug, the Made in Los Estados Unidos coffee mug. That's what I'm proud of. And but you buy the Trump fart filtration masks, my biggest seller. All this work I put into the show, what's my biggest seller? This. Hope you're in the mood for diarrhea, the chef's apron. I've cultivated an audience of ignorami. I thought, if you work really hard and fact check and speak the truth, you'll get a smart audience. This is my number one seller. Hope you're in the mood for diarrhea. It's a chef's apron that says, hope you're in the mood for diarrhea. This is what makes me depressed. Not the state of the country, the fact that I've worked so hard on this show, and you buy the hope you're in the mood. We have some new stuff over there. Thank you all for listening. I read all your comments, unless you're a MAGA moron. So please leave a comment. Thank you to Bob in the chat room for keeping the conversation civilized. A lot of stuff to get to this week. I'm going to try to do a show Thursday. Thank you for listening to me. Seriously, thank you.